I heard your voice in the hotel room. Taehyung's Paris interview shocks ARMYA quiet confession. A nameless memory. A voice that refuses to fade. Was it Jungkook all along? It wasn't a headline moment. There were no flashing lights, and screaming crowds, and paparazzi waiting outside. Just a softly lit room in a Parisian hotel, the kind where stories are whispered instead of shouted, where truth slips through the cracks of carefully curated answers. And yet, what Taehyung said in that moment has set the entire BTS fandom on fire. During a subdued, exclusive interview with a French fashion outlet, Taehyung was asked a simple question. Where do you find inspiration when you're alone? He looked down, he paused, and then he said, quietly, like the words were meant for himself more than anyone else, sometimes I hear voices from memory when I'm alone. He had a deep voice. No names, and context, and clarifications, but for armies around the world, only one voice came to mind. Jungkook. Because if there is one thing Jungkook has always been known for, beyond his dance, his smile, his tattooed arms, his unwavering commitment to music, it's his voice. Rich, soulful, resonant. A voice that doesn't just sing, it stays. And now, that voice is haunting someone. Taehyung didn't elaborate. The interviewer moved on. And yet, the damage had already been done, because in those 9 words, Taehyung did what no headline, no backstage photo, no social media caption could. He cracked his silence, and what spilled out? Memory, regret, yearning. It was so unguarded, so out of place in the sharp, polished world of Paris fashion interviews, that fans are left wondering if Taehyung even meant to say it, or if the truth simply slipped past his defenses. Because let's not forget where this interview took place, a hotel room, the very space fans speculated Taehyung might have shared, at least emotionally, with someone else during his Paris trip. Rumors had already swirled about Jungkook's absence from Celine events, despite whispers that he was supposed to attend. Whispers that he had been there, at least in the background. Whispers that someone close to Taehyung never checked in publicly, but may have been near. And now, Taehyung says, sometimes I hear voices from memory when I'm alone. He doesn't say I imagine, he doesn't say I remember. He says I hear. If that voice, his voice, is still there, still echoing, still haunting the silence between designer fittings and red carpet flashes, still whispering to Taehyung in the quiet hours before dawn, when the champagne is dried, and the makeup is off, and the real questions rise. And the most devastating part, he says, he had a deep voice. Past tense, though that voice, that presence, that closeness is no longer part of his present. And suddenly, fans are back in that same loop again. The jacket, the glance, the step away, the silence, the live stream, the hug that wasn't his. And now, this desentenced a ghost of a boy who still lives in Taehyung's hotel room. Not physically, but in sound. It's too specific to be general. Too emotional to be about anyone else. Because who else could it be? Not Bogum, not a stylist, not a nameless friend only. Jungkook has ever held that place in Taehyung's world, loud enough to fill his silence, yet intimate enough to remain unnamed. And if Taehyung meant to say it, if that was his way of reaching out, then the question now is, will Jungkook answer? Because Taehyung didn't tag him, didn't mention him, didn't make it obvious. But the armies who know, who really know, caught it instantly. One fan tweeted, "You don't hear someone's voice in a hotel room unless that voice once filled the space with you." Another wrote, "Taehyung finally said something. And he said it in the loneliest way possible." And it's true. This wasn't a statement of reconciliation. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a plead. It was a confession, accidental, aching, uninvited, like a note left under a door that will never be opened. Because if Taehyung is hearing Jungkook's voice when he's alone, and Jungkook is crying on live streams, whispering about being forgotten, then maybe neither of them has really moved on. Maybe the distance is only physical. Maybe the real silence is inside their hearts. And maybe, just maybe, they're both waiting for the other to speak first. But now that Taehyung has broken his own silence, fans are holding their breath. Because you don't say something like that unless it still hurts, unless you still miss him, unless the sound of that deep voice, once so close, so comforting, is now the very thing that breaks you when you're finally alone. Jungkook, if you're listening, he heard you, even in the quiet. even in Paris, even now, and that's what makes it all the more devastating. Because if Taehyung hears Jungkook's voice in the silence of a luxury hotel room, after the cameras are gone, after the stylists have left, after Park Bo-gum is no longer within arm's reach, then the moment is real. The absence is personal. And the voice isn't just a memory. It's a presence that refuses to die, not because Taehyung wants to forget, but because he can't. And the irony is cruel. The louder the world gets around him, the more clearly he hears that one voice when he's finally alone. He had a deep voice. A simple statement, but beneath it an earthquake, because fans remember that voice too. The way Jungkook's vocals could shake a stadium, yet soften to a whisper when he sang beside Taehyung. The way his laugh used to burst through behind-the-scenes clips when V teased him, chased him, sang in harmony with him. The way Jungkook once spoke Taehyung's name like it was home, and now, it's just a ghost in a hotel room. A ghost Taehyung seems to have invited in without meaning to, but it didn't stop there, because shortly after the interview aired, a quiet storm began brewing online. Armies began resurfacing old clips of Jungkook calling Taehyung my soulmate, of Taehyung holding Jungkook's mic when his hands shook, of private V-Live sessions where nothing needed to be said because the silence between them was always enough. Until now. Now that silence has become a wall, a chasm, a reflection of what's been lost. And what's worse, they still seem to walk parallel paths, same cities, same brands, same hotel corridors, but never side by side anymore. It's like a cruel ballet of avoidance. And yet, this interview shattered that rhythm. Just for a second, because even though Taehyung didn't say his name, he didn't have to. When someone leaves an imprint that deep, you don't forget their voice. You don't forget the pitch of it when they laugh, or the tremble in it when they cry. You don't forget how it sounded late at night through a thin hotel wall, or in rehearsal rooms when the world outside was too loud. And you especially don't forget it when you're finally alone. That's when it returns. That's when it haunts. And for Taehyung to admit that in a room filled with luxury and language barriers and flashing cameras, that wasn't fashion. That was confession. IT was the kind of slip that doesn't happen unless the feeling is still raw. Unless the name you didn't say is still burning on your tongue. Unless the voice you miss the most is still louder than all the noise. SO now. Fans are watching. Waiting, not for a response from the media, but from him, from Jungkook, because Taehyung may have only spoken 9 words, but those 9 words cracked open the dam, and if Jungkook hears them, if he lets them in, will he respond? Will he reach out? Will he finally break the silence? Or will he do what he's done in recent weeks, retreat further? Will he see the interview and feel the sting of past affection turned into bittersweet nostalgia? Or will he feel what we all felt? Hope, the kind of hope that doesn't scream, the kind that sits quietly in the corner of a hotel room, replaying the sound of a voice that used to say, I'm here. I see you. I've got you. Because if Jungkook hears that someone still hears him, even when he's gone, even when the door's closed, even when the world is watching, then maybe that's enough to bring him back. Maybe not in words, maybe not in public, but maybe in the way he always knew how to answer. A lyric, a look, a voice note, just for him. Because even family forgets you until they remember the sound of your voice in the silence. And sometimes, just sometimes, that voice is all it takes to find your way home, a ChatGPT belong. And maybe that's all Taehyung ever wanted. Not a grand gesture, not an apology, not a headline that reads, Taehyung reunited. Just a response, a sign, a ripple in the silence. Because you don't say something like, I hear his voice unless you're still listening. You don't confess a memory that intimate unless you're still haunted. And you definitely don't let it slip in a foreign interview. In a city full of flashing lights and filtered smiles, unless part of you is aching for it to be heard. Not by fans, not by journalists, but by him, BY Jungkook. Because behind the fame and fashion, behind the brand contracts and chart-topping records, they were always just 2 boys who found something unspoken in each other. Taehyung, wild, unpredictable, emotionally layered. Jungkook, steady, focused, deeply intuitive. Together, they built something the world could only guess at. Not romance. Not friendship, something else. something only they understood. And now, it's all echoes, a live stream tiered, a deleted caption that a jacket passed between them like a silent message, a moment in Paris where Jungkook walked away, and Taehyung didn't stop him. But what if this was him finally calling him back? Not with a name, but with a memory, a voice, a sound only he would recognize. Because when Taehyung said, "I heard his voice," fans weren't the only ones who listened. Jungkook saw it, we know he did. Maybe he watched it late at night, earbuds in, the lights off, just like armies around the world. Maybe he paused at that moment. Maybe he didn't blink. And maybe, just maybe, his heart broke all over again. Because it's one thing to be left out. It's another to realize you were never truly let go. Not fully, not completely, not if your voice still lives in someone's silence. And the tragedy of it all, they're both still there, I in the same industry, I and the same time zone, still surrounded by people who call them brothers, and yet they feel like strangers, like two echoes bouncing off the walls of different rooms, connected only by what was. But what if it doesn't have to stay that way? What if this moment, this confession, was Taehyung's way of opening a door he wasn't ready to knock on? What if he knew Jungkook would hear it? That he always did. That even when Jungkook walked away, even when he stopped posting, even when his face turned blank in Paris, he still listened. As oh, maybe now, it's Jungkook's turn. Taehyung sing that song again. Taehyung leave a trace. Taehyung show up in the way Taehyung used to, in the small, quiet, devastatingly human ways. Because love like that, whatever form it took, doesn't just vanish. It lingers, in hotel walls, in backstage corridors, in the sound of a voice you weren't supposed to hear again. But do, because some part of you never stopped listening. One fan said it best. If Taehyung hears his voice in the silence, then Jungkook was never truly gone. Just waiting. And maybe, finally, they're done waiting. Maybe it starts with a message, at a glance, at a moment, or maybe it starts the way it always did, with a voice low, familiar, shaking maybe, but still full of something only Taehyung can understand. Because when the noise fades, when the cameras turn away, when Paris becomes just another postcard memory, there will still be that voice that I end the silence, that I end the memory, that I end the hotel room, saying without words, I never stopped hearing you either.